All right, welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. This is going to be a solo pod for me. I want to get in the habit of doing these daily. Obviously, that probably won't be possible, but I'm going to try to do it as much as possible. So, some news came down, which is perfect for this episode. Don Mattingly was hired as the Phillies bench coach for the 2026 season. When originally at the end of your press conference, when they added the role, I was under the assumption that the new bench coach would be a younger guy, kind of in the mindset of, okay, Topper, like it's time to go. Like you got renewed for another year, you got an extension, but you need to pick it up to where the bench coach could take over for Topper. Let's say if they have a start to the 2026 season similar to the start we had in 2022 when Joe Girardi was let go and Rob Thompson was given the job. That's not the case with Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly has stated he doesn't want to manage anymore. He wants to stay in the game, but managerial is not something he wants to do again. And you can't really blame him. Being a big league manager is a taxing job. It's like 9 months out of the year. Pitchers and catchers report in February. Then you have the 6 month season. And if you're a good team, you're going to be playing into October. It is a taxing job. And let's just get over, for people who may not know who Don Mattingly is, he's a pretty big baseball figure, but we're here on this podcast to teach. So Don Mattingly was a prevalent Yankee in the 80s and early 90s. He was their best player in that run. Unfortunately, the New York Yankees, he never made a postseason. He never played a playoff game with the Yankees because they never made it in his time. But he won an MVP there. He has the nickname Donnie Baseball. Look up Don Mattingly Yankees highlights. You will not be disappointed. He was a stud and he was beloved by the Yankees. He became a manager with the Dodgers in 2011. He stayed there till 2015. Then the very next year, he was hired as the Miami Marlins manager. And then he has spent his last 3 years with the Toronto Blue Jays. Donnie Baseball is a great baseball mind and a great addition to the staff. Now, some people might think, oh, is this move a move that can be like he could possibly replace Rob Thompson? Like I said, that's not going to happen. He doesn't want to manage. Topper and Don Mattingly were both on the Yankees coaching staff 2004, 5, 6, and 7. And then Don Mattingly became Joe Torre's bench coach and then ultimately took over for him in the 2011 season. They got a great relationship. Don Mattingly has no intention of taking the job from Rob Thompson. So overall, what does this mean for the Phillies coaching staff? I think it just improves it, right? Coaching doesn't win championships. Players win championships. Dave Roberts is a clear example. Dave Roberts is a good manager. I don't think he's a great manager. He's made a lot of playoff blunders, similar to our beloved Rob Thompson. But what wins in the playoffs is your players. The Dodgers won because they had Shohei Ohtani, Yamamoto, Andy Pages making that play. Now, granted, Dave Roberts did sub Andy Pages in as a defensive replacement. Great move, but Dave Roberts is not on the field making any move, like any plays. He's not playing anymore. Same way with Don Mattingly. He's not gonna be a contributor to them winning in the postseason. He can help, but like I said, coaching, it really comes down to the players. But anytime you can add someone with his baseball background, that is a win for the organization. Speaking of the organization, his son, Preston Mattingly, is kind of not his boss, but in the hierarchy of the organization. It's just kind of funny. Preston Mattingly is Don Mattingly's son. Preston Mattingly is the GM of the Phillies. Dave Dombrowski is the president of baseball operations. So Preston Mattingly really isn't your typical GM. He's not making the decisions. That obviously goes through Dave Dombrowski. But he's very prevalent. He works side by side with Dave Dombrowski. He has his input, of course, but he's not the ultimate decision maker. And before he was promoted to GM, he was working in the minor leagues as I believe it was his player development lead. So players like Adam Miller, Andrew Painter, Justin Crawford, Mick Abel before he got traded, he saw the development of them. So if these young guys perform well, we can thank Preston Mattingly for that. Now, another little tidbit. Don Mattingly and Bo Bichette have a great relationship. Is Bo Bichette going to sign with the Phillies strictly because Don Mattingly is now the bench coach? Absolutely not. But all it can do is help their chances. Maybe Bo Bichette is leaning one way or the other. He likes familiarity with Don Mattingly. He decides to come to the Phillies. I don't think it's ever going to come down to that, but it can only help. And then, similar with Bo Bichette, let's get into a couple reports I heard today, mainly coming from the Phillies show. They kind of just said, hey, maybe the Phillies were the ones that contacted John Heyman to put out the report that they were interested in Bo Bichette. John Heyman is a famous baseball reporter, but there has been about like some thought that John Heyman is what's the word? He speaks for the agents. The agents give him information, whether it's true or not, and he reports on it to kind of get the players kind of double guessing or thinking of like, oh crap, what's going on? I think this has a chance to relate to JT Realmuto. So if the Phillies sign Bo Bichette, obviously I think that takes him out of the JT Realmuto sweepstakes just because they don't have unlimited money. So maybe the Phillies were like, hey, John, put this report out there to where we're interested in Bo Bichette, maybe put some pressure on JT to kind of, hey, you need to make your decision. Me personally, I don't respect that. I think you're playing games. Now, sometimes I guess you have to play games in free agency with the agent, with everything going on. But me personally, if I was Dave Dombrowski in the Phillies organization in regards to JT, I would be like, hey, we don't want to like play any games. We want to tell you, hey, this is our offer. This is our final offer. This is the deadline to accept it. Because if you don't accept it, we're going to go in another direction. And I think they should have done that a week ago. We are in January. We are pitchers and catchers report in 5 weeks. JT not signing is kind of ridiculous because the fact that it's gone this long, it makes me believe that JT doesn't have the market that he thinks he does, to where he's trying to get every year, every last dollar out of the Phillies, which on his part, I don't blame him for. You're the player. Get your most money as you can. You're a 35-year-old catcher. This is probably going to be your last big league contract. Get whatever you can. But I think it is behind it on the Phillies to be like, hey, this is our deadline. This is our final offer. Take it or we are going to go somewhere else. Me personally, I would just go somewhere else regardless. I would go sign Bo Bichette if that's what they really want to do. But the way John Middleton has been moving this offseason, the way Dave Dombrowski has been moving, I don't really think they are as big players in Bo Bichette as the media is portraying it. I think they're just using this as a chance to just get JT signed to where they can have him locked in. They don't have to worry about the catching position. Maybe make some fringe other moves, and then get their team ready for spring training so they have all their eggs in the basket, kind of make sure, okay, this is the team we're going into 2026 in. Now, Bo Bichette or JT? I've said this on numerous episodes. I'd prefer Bo Bichette. I think if the Phillies are really trying to go win a World Series, they should sign Bo Bichette. Bryce Harper needs protection. Kyle Schwarber needs protection, to where if you add Bo Bichette into that lineup, that changes everything. Let me just give you a projected lineup with Bo Bichette. Trey Turner, Bryce Harper number 2, Bo Bichette number 3, Kyle Schwarber number 4. Now, you can always flip-flop Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. Schwarber can bat 2, Harper can bat 4, whatever. But that gives you a righty to split up the lefties. Now, if they don't make an addition, I think Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper should bat back-to-back. I'm not that worried about lefty-lefty because Kyle Schwarber rakes against lefties, so does Bryce Harper. But it does help if you can put a legit right-handed bat in the middle of them, to where late in the games, late in postseason games, if they have a lefty specialist, they don't have to just like, okay, that lefty's job is to get Bryce and Kyle out. Now he has to get Bryce, then Bo, then Kyle. That's what I want the Philadelphia Phillies to do. And it just comes down to really if John Middleton is willing to sign the check. He's always been willing to before. He's a great owner in the sense of spending money. But there might be a tipping point where he doesn't want to go over the luxury tax again and again and again. They paid $56 million in luxury tax fees alone, which is a lot of money. Me personally, I think if you're going to re-sign Kyle Schwarber, that means you're all in. So let's be all in with signing a Bo Bichette or Alex Redmond. Because what's going to happen in the playoffs again if Bryce Harper doesn't have protection? If Kyle Schwarber is the 3 hitter now, Bryce Harper's 2, they flip flop. Now Kyle Schwarber doesn't have protection. A starting pitcher and relievers only have to get that top 3, and then what do you got? Alec Boehm, JT, Adolis Garcia. No one's afraid of those hitters, to where it hinders us in the postseason again. What has been the Phillies' problem in the postseason the last 2 years? Hitting. So why not get Bo Bichette? I could probably talk on hours of why we should get Bo Bichette. We're just going to have to see what happens. But ultimately, Don Mattingly coming to the Phillies. Maybe that helps out Bo Bichette, but ultimately maybe the Phillies are just spewing out the Bo Bichette Phillies rumors to get JT to sign. I think we'll know in about a week or so. Like if JT signs in a couple days, then we'll kind of know the report about them being interested in Bo Bichette was never real. It was just a ploy by the Phillies to talk to John Heyman for John Heyman to spew that to the media. Now, if Bo Bichette signs, I'll eat my words, and I'll be happy to eat those words. And then before we end this episode, there was also a report that the Phillies are heavily interested in Randall Grichuk. Now, I have been a Randall Grichuk fan for a couple of years. He mashes against lefties, but I think this is a case too little, too late. Randall Grichuk is 34 years old, and career wise, he is an 819 OPS against lefties. That's pretty good, right? But he struggled in 2025 with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He had a 703 OPS against lefties. If they do sign him, he's obviously going to be Brandon Marsh's platoon partner. I don't think that makes really any sense. I think if you were going to get a legit platoon partner for Brandon Marsh, you would have signed Rob Refsnyder. He signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Seattle Mariners. So I guess Randall Grichuk, if he signs maybe like a $3-4 million deal, Rob Refsnyder is 10 times the hitter against lefties that Randall Grichuk is. So that move would make absolutely zero sense to me. I'm not going to be upset if they do it, but it doesn't make sense to me because we have Otto Kemp. Otto Kemp had a 786 OPS against lefties, and he was hitting the cover off the baseball in September, predominantly against lefties. So what does that mean for Otto Kemp if you sign a Randall Grichuk? Where is his playing time going to be? Because the Phillies during this offseason have said how much they love Otto Kemp. Dave Dombrowski is even quoted on the record to say he thinks Otto Kemp can be an everyday player. Do they think maybe they could trade an Alec Bohm to where they give Otto Kemp the everyday third base position to start the year? If they do that, and then Randall Grichuk is your platoon partner for Brandon Marsh, I'm not going to be upset. That might even make it easier for Aiden Miller to have a spot when he's ready in AAA. Because we talked about if Aiden Miller's ready, he's going to find a way on the big league roster. But it really just depends on how he plays in AAA. So if he's hitting the cover off the ball, he's going to be up in South Philly. It makes it much easier for him to come up if he's taken Otto Kemp's position compared to Alec Bohm. Because if Alec Bohm's still on the roster and then he loses his job, that's going to be a clubhouse nightmare, similar to what it was when Nick Castellanos lost his everyday job and he became a platoon partner. You saw how that went with Rob Thompson. It was a clubhouse disaster. Now, me personally, I think Casty handled it well with the media. I think the media was trying to rage bait him the entire month of August, the entire month of September with the questions, just egging him on to say something that they could write a story about. I think something similar would happen with Alec Bohm. And Alec Bohm, I mean, you know how he is, right? He pouts a lot. Can you imagine if he's not playing every day? So I just don't think the Phillies would put themselves in that position to where I think you kind of have to make a decision on Alec Bohm. I really think you got to trade him. And then also another option to be a platoon partner for Brandon Marsh, Weston Wilson. He has a career 834 OPS against lefties, but he did struggle in 2025. He had a 654 OPS. He played a little bit better towards the end of the year, but Weston Wilson is out of options, so I don't see a world where he's on the big league roster as well. I think they would designate him for assignment. Maybe a team picks him up off waivers. You can get some cash back for him, but I don't think Weston Wilson has any spot on the big league roster, to be honest. But that's pretty much going to do it for today. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with JT, if Bo Bichette signs. I think JT's market is going to pick up soon to where the Phillies are going to have to make a decision because we are getting to that time where it is close to spring training. We are 5 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. I think this JT signing should have happened a couple weeks ago because it's like if you don't have that market JT, which I don't think he does if he's still unsigned with how close we are to spring training, the Phillies have to buckle up and be like, look, JT, this is the offer we're going to make. So I don't know if the Phillies are like real players for Bo Bichette. I really don't. I hope they are. I think they should be if they're really want to compete for a World Series in 2026. But we just don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. And then obviously the moves that do happen before spring training or even during spring training are going to tell us everything we need to know if the Phillies are serious about winning a World Series. I think they are, but we'll just have to wait and see. Me and Ryan will come back with an episode tomorrow. It is going to be the Chase Utley versus Dustin Pedroia debate. I'm going to get all my eggs in the basket for Chase Utley, obviously. Ryan will do that for Dustin. And then we're going to let you guys decide who's the better player in the comments. But that'll do it for me. You guys have a good one.